Hey folks, it's the Poor Sports Seattle podcast, and today we are talking about the topic that's sweeping Seattle. There's an article that came out called "Godfather Offers for Skeens, Acuña, and Buxton Trade Proposals Their Teams Might Not Reject," and it focuses a little bit on the Mariners making a trade for Ronald Acuña, which we will talk about after this music. All right, so this is an article that came out in ESPN, and we will talk about the specifics of the article and a couple things that I want to talk about in addition to that. First off, I want to talk about Ronald Acuña as a player. Acuña has been very good. I believe he's in like the top. He's very highly ranked in wins above replacement since he came out. I think 37 something wins above replacement since he made it to the majors, which is very good. I want to say top 20 in that time, and that includes, by the way, extended periods of injury. And that's going to be a theme about Ronald Acuña is two times he has, and you can see this in the article here, two times Ronald Acuña has torn his ACL and needed ACL reconstruction surgery. That's not great. I will say in his early days, in his early career, he was high 90s percentile in sprint speed, and now he's in the mid 60s, basically. He's lost, 2 feet per second? Like, he's slowed down a little bit. And I want to make a comparison of Ronald Acuña to Juan Soto. I think that's the closest trade comp we have for this specific trade scenario for a couple reasons. One, Acuña is cost controlled. He's not super expensive. There's team control on him for the next 2 years. Soto was a star among stars. He was younger when he got traded. He's younger. He's 26 years old still. And he got traded twice. So we have kind of a front end and back end of the deal to take a look at to see what the years of control are actually worth in the open market. He got traded at the deadline when he got traded to the San Diego Padres. He got traded in the offseason when he got traded to the Yankees, and then he signed a mega contract. So we have a very good, this is a mature comp. We're not doing a lot of projection on what Juan Soto will become, how much he will cost. We know how much he cost financially. We know how much he cost to acquire and how much he yielded in a trade. And he's also, by the way, he mashed everywhere. He was tremendous in Washington. He was tremendous in San Diego, and he was tremendous with the Yankees, and he's been great with the Mets. In some ways, the Juan Soto trade is like best case scenario for how this trade could work out. The proposal that who wrote the ESPN article? Let's give him a little bit of credit. Let me get back to we'll get back over to the actual article itself. David Schoenfield. So, he suggests what would force the Godfather analogy is make him an offer they can't refuse. This is the offer that the Mariners could make to the Braves to acquire Ronald Acuña, which are Colt Emerson, the Mariners' number one prospect, their top prospect. Here in this article, it ranks him number 10. This is ESPN's rankings. As we go through this, I'm just letting you know that I've used the Fangraphs rankings as we're looking at them. Bryce Miller, Harry Ford, Laz Montez, and Brandon Garcia. So, outside of, Colt Emerson, top prospect, very highly rated. Laz Montez, not going to make the big leagues in 2025, very likely. But Harry Ford, Brandon Garcia, very likely to pitch or to play in the big leagues at some point this year. Maybe not 50%, maybe not over 50%, but pretty likely. These guys are pretty close to being big league ready, I think, by most by most measures. And Bryce Miller is obviously already a very good big league starter. That's a lot to give up. You got, by some people's measure, 3 top 100 prospects. I don't think, has Brandon Garcia made it to any? I don't think he's made it to any of the top 100 lists, but let's see for sure, just to round it out. Brandon Garcia, by the way, is a guy that I think can come up and be immediately an impact lefty reliever. But has he made any? Yeah, so no top 100 list. Pitching in, he's 25 years old though. Pitching in Double A, pitched in and Triple A. 3.38 ERA, 8.4 strikeouts per 9, 5.1 walks per 9 at Tacoma, 11.9, 4.3 at Arkansas. So at Double A. So a guy that my point is a guy that is not celebrated in the system, but a guy that can come up and contribute this year. So you're actually, in both these cases, Bryce Miller and Brandon Garcia, you're taking away from this year's team. Harry Ford, we've talked about Harry Ford a little bit recently. My expectation is that Harry Ford is a wash with the projection of Mitch Garver for the rest of the year. Not to say Mitch Garver is incredible, not to say Harry Ford has a lower ceiling or anything like that. He's the guy that I think that has value, that I'm most willing to trade from the farm system because he's fully blocked by Cal Raleigh, but also he's the projection isn't that great. The projection is like a league average hitter or slightly worse this year, probably a little better than league average for his career, but the big value is that he can play catcher, and he's not going to play catcher in Seattle. If all things go right, he's not playing catcher in Seattle. So that's the offer that's being suggested. I'm pulling this up. So this is the Fangraphs rating. Colt Emerson, they have him. It's interesting that they have him as number 1 in the organization, but actually lower on the top 100 list, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But very close to Cole Young. They have these guys very close to each other. There's some suggestion that Colt Emerson can stick at shortstop, but that's because the reason that's notable is because there's been a lot of suggestion that he cannot stick at shortstop. So the fact that there's consideration that he might stick at shortstop is a big plus in his favor. Harry Ford next on the list. Herangelo Sanjay not in the deal. He's 81st. Johnny Farmello, Felon Celestine. And then we see Laz Montez at the bottom. He's outside of the top 100, outside of the overall ranked list, but 7th on the Mariners farm system rankings. So 3 of the top 7 guys, also a big league starter that's young, also a potential leverage reliever in 2025. It's a lot to give up. Also, here's another thing about this. My argument, by the way, against this, and I want to talk about it all the way through and give you like I even consulted with a friend of mine who's a big Padres fan to just get like straight up the fans' point of view, a guy that is not super into analytics, a guy that's just a fan for the fun of baseball. So if that's you, I'm going to consult with someone to probably be the last thing we talk about on the podcast. But my friend Josh Firestein, very funny comedian, is a huge Padres fan, the biggest Padres fan I know, and he has some opinions on the Juan Soto trade. So the other thing about this trade, the Padres made the trade for Juan Soto on August 2nd, 2022, I believe. And at the time they made that trade, August 2nd, 2022, they had a 96.4% chance of making the playoffs and a 9.1% chance of winning the World Series. This was while the Dodgers didn't have an 11-man deep rotation and every goddamn top free agent for the last several years outside of Juan Soto. Like, this is a worse Dodgers team, a Dodgers team that it was still allowing parity in the AL West, but the Padres had a very good chance of making the playoffs. Of course, would Ronald Acuña improve the Mariners' chances of making the playoffs? Absolutely. But to trade all those prospects for Ronald Acuña, and what does he raise their chances? 15%? Still, there's a significant chance that the Mariners trade for Ronald Acuña and don't make the playoffs this year, and now are stuck with this guy. Not stuck. He's very good. He's 27 years old, I believe, right now. They have this guy who they've invested a bunch of prospect capital in, who they wasted it, squandered it in 2025, and he's got 2 torn ACLs. He's aging. He's still hitting, by the way. He's having his best hitting year of his career so far since his return this year. Still, a guy who's approaching 30, it's a less valuable player. And this is why I brought up the Juan Soto return as part of this conversation. We're going to get into that in a minute. But what's the salvage value? I actually just I just went to the DMV because last year I have a little Toyota pickup truck, and last year I was in Bellingham, Washington, drinking outdoors with my wife. My mom is at our house sitting. A big windstorm comes through Tacoma, Washington. My mom texts us. She's like, "Is it pretty bad up by you?" And we were eating outdoors. It was like very nice. It ended up getting bad later. The storm was going south to north, and we had like a genuinely scary moment where I, just in case the hotel's power went out, we wanted to have a little bit of extra water. So I went to this convenience store by our hotel, and we were like a little buzzed also, so we wanted to make sure we got a little bit of hangover cure in us. And I walked to this convenience store 2 blocks down. First off, my wife and I had just walked by there. A tree had fallen across the road in the 15 minutes we were in the hotel. I go to this convenience store from the time that we got to the hotel, and then the storm starts hitting harder. The tree falls. It turned into Mad Max. I literally saw a dude. By the way, I've never seen Mad Max. I make that analogy. Never seen it. Literally a guy. I go into the convenience store, come out. There's a guy with a chain that's been like welded to a metal baseball bat walking around like with like a leather cut off jacket or vest, whatever. Terrifying situation. The point is, in Tacoma, big tree limb fell on my truck, my pickup truck, salvaged the title. So Juan Soto was healthy and productive when the Padres traded him. And it was the offseason. There was not a limited supply of teams looking for Juan Soto. It does help that it was the Yankees trading for him, a team with some wealth, a team with some resources to give up. But what they got for him was significantly worse than what they gave up for him. And we'll talk about that. But again, where the Mariners are on their win curve, what their probability is to make the playoffs, what their probability is to win the World Series, to me, very important to this equation. I think like the Mariners are not, I mean, we see this. They are 95% likely to not win the World Series, if to look at it one way. This is what what the Padres gave up to acquire Juan Soto, and I've got in parentheses next to the players' names, the players' ranking the last year they were eligible for the Fangraphs top list before the trade. So Luke Voit, by the way, Luke Voit in this in my research for this did not remember that he was the 2020 home run champion with 22 home runs. It's the shortened season, but still crazy. CJ Abrams at the time was the 16th overall prospect. Mackenzie Gore had made his major league debut. He wasn't eligible for the list anymore, but he was pitching well, and he was the number 2 overall prospect the year before. Robert Hassel III, number 65 and he's actually made his major league debut, I think this year. Not playing great, but like made his major league debut. James Wood absolutely crushing, the best player in this trade so far, number 9 in the 22. And by the way, this 22U, Fangraphs does a cool thing in the recent years. They have the preseason list, and then they have the updated list partway through the year. So that's the if a player's on that, that's the most indicative of what their value was at the time of the trade. If it's a deadline trade, Abrams, I believe, had already made it to the majors, so that's why he doesn't have he wasn't on the updated list. And then Harlan Susana, which I believe is in the majors or close to the majors. So you're talking about Voit is like older guy, quad A player, organizational depth E. 4 players that are considered top 100 prospects. Mackenzie Gore, super high on that list. Can't miss prospect. and has been worth it. Has been as good as advertised. And that for Juan Soto and Josh Bell, which, by the way, Josh Bell is now back with Washington. And it's a lot to give up. This is more than the Mariners would have to give up, according to this. No, we go. Hold on. Let's go back a slide. It's more than the Mariners would have to give up, according to this trade offer. But, and I guess that's the other question is my opposition to any trade. If I was going to be opposed to this, my opposition is because it's incredibly hard for the Mariners to acquire hitting talent. And so our 3 years of Ronald Acuña, that's like maybe the last guy you can acquire. Because this would strip the cupboard pretty bare. It would take away a lot of the Mariners' top prospects, would strip the cupboard pretty bare. And the last couple off seasons, it's been, I don't know if it's, I don't think I'm the only one picking up on this, but like, guys don't want to take the Mariners' money. Young guys that you would actually want them to acquire, they don't want to take the Mariners' money. Why did you end up with Donovan Solano? Why were there guys signing for deals that you would happily have had them sign with the Mariners? Maybe for more. Because they want a chance at another contract. And if they come play for the Mariners, it might be career suicide. So, are we even allowed to say that on YouTube? Career unaliving. It's Josh Bell, I believe, struggled with the Padres. My friend Josh, I remember complaining about it a lot during the time. So let's talk about these guys, because I talked about Luke Voigt a little bit. Is it Luke Vogt, by the way? I think it is Luke Vogt. But let's talk about what these prospects are doing at this point, because damn. So these guys are already playing well. I used the Fangraphs projected, or Zips updated projections. Zips, not because it's the most or least, or that I even have a handle on how accurate it is. I just like Dan Zimborski, the guy that created it, and we follow each other on Twitter, and he's done this podcast or a podcast of mine in the past. So James Wood, outfielder, 5.6 wins above replacement according to Fangraphs is their projection, end of season projection. CJ Abrams, 4.2 wins above replacement projection. Mackenzie Gore, 3.9 wins above replacement projection. Quick back of the napkin math, you're like approaching 13 wins above replacement from those guys. By the way, the last year he was healthy and played a full season, Ronald Acuña was worth 9 wins above replacement. But that was the only year that I believe it was the only year that he cracked 5 wins above replacement. And if you're trading for a guy and he's a 5-win player, that's fantastic. If you could sign a guy that's a 5-win player, that's fantastic. But it's very likely not realistic for the Mariners to sign a guy that's a 5-win player. I'd also say, you can just look at the prospect rankings. These guys are not, every player on here was ranked higher than any Mariners prospect is ranked right now. So you can adjust down or up for that. Just a good feel for what's going on now. Did Washington win this trade? Well, if they weren't going to win with Juan Soto, which is kind of the calculus that Atlanta's making, by the way, if they weren't going to win with Juan Soto, to give him up and get 3 guys who are significantly above average. James Woods looks great. CJ Abrams looks great. Mackenzie Gore looks great. There's still upside to project out of these guys. That seems like a win to me. Is it possible for both teams to win the trade? I do think so. And I think I think this is a great example of that kind of trade, by the way. Before we get into we're going to keep digging into some numbers. I do think that both the Padres got out of Juan Soto. Outside of winning a World Series, they got out of Juan Soto what you would want to get out of Juan Soto. He hit the fuck out of the ball. He was a great player for the Padres. Not a great defender. By the way, Ronald Acuña's, I hope I didn't say this earlier in the podcast, Ronald Acuña's speed right now, which is mid-60s sprint speed, is basically Juan Soto's peak. I think there's this view of, because I guess it's just because Soto looks so athletic that he's like, I think some people think that he's a horrible defensive outfielder. And I don't think Acuna is, like, present day, I don't think he's an incredible outfielder. Losing speed will do that to an outfielder. The numbers are too early. Okay, so another thing about Soto, I find this fascinating. According to StatCast, 2018, he was in the 88th percentile of batting run value. In every year that has followed, he has been in the 98th or higher batting run value percentile of batting run value. That's crazy. That is a generational hitter. Ronald Acuña is very good. Ronald Acuña is not that. I think that Acuña's got like 37 wins above replacement, and Soto's got like 50. They both came up in 2018, played partial seasons in 2018. And some of that is because Acuña's been injured, but that's not irrelevant. The fact that Acuña's been injured is not irrelevant to this trade prospect. That's actually really important to this conversation. Is, let's say Acuña is healthy. Could the Mariners yield a positive result in the way that the Padres did, where the player comes in and just continues to dominate? Sure. Is there a distinct possibility, significantly higher than there was for Juan Soto, that Acuña comes here and suffers a third catastrophic knee injury and becomes a shell of his former self, becomes not very valuable in trade, especially if the Mariners go down the road of extending him? Let's make sure, is Acuña what's Ronald Acuña's contract situation? He signed an 8-year, $100 million extension in 2019, so right after his rookie year, I believe, and has a 2027, 2028 team option for $17 million a year. I mean, one, great value. There's no way he's a Boris client and signed a pre-arbitration extension, is there? No. Okay. That's promising. But so there's a chance the Mariners could trade for Ronald Acuña, and they extend him, and it's a disaster. That's in the pie chart of probable outcomes. That's some chunk. Is it 5%? Is it 25%? I haven't seen the medicals. I don't know how well. I don't know how. He also, by the way, Ronald Acuña, prior to those two injuries, had another ACL injury, not a catastrophic tear, but did have a sprain of his ACL earlier in his career. So is this something? What you don't want to be is the Cincinnati Reds trading for Ken Griffey Jr. and giving up Mike Cameron, who immediately is better than Ken Griffey Jr., paying Ken Griffey Jr. a shitload of money, and you traded away a guy who immediately was more valuable on a season-by-season basis, not in ticket sales or whatever intangibles that you might want to assign to Ken Griffey Jr. And by the way, as the kids say, no shade on Ken Griffey Jr. I love Ken Griffey Jr. As I've said many times on this podcast. Had either of my children been boys, I'd have named them Griffey, and I was fighting a little bit for the second daughter, to be named Griffey. So, I love Ken Griffey Jr., but the trade that sent him to Cincinnati was a disaster for Cincinnati. You don't want to be that team. You don't want to be the team trading a ton of prospects, signing him to a big extension, and then watching him rot with a degenerative knee on your injured list. So that's it. That has to be part of the valuation of Acuña. Not as good as Soto. Acknowledging all that as we go through. So then, before the 2024 season, which shout out to AJ Preller, assuming he has not been. I'm not like up on. Preller is still the. Yeah, okay. He's still the president of baseball ops for the Padres. To have the foresight and the bravery to trade away Juan Soto before last season is, I think, brilliant. I think this is maybe where I differ from some fans, which is it would take a lot for me. I can't even imagine a scenario where I wouldn't want the Mariners to hedge a little bit, to like leave themselves some outs in future years. So this idea that you like go for it all, even in a year where you have a 4 point something percent chance of winning the World Series, but even like in a year, if you're the Dodgers, are the Dodgers really going for it all in every year? Well, all is relative because the Dodgers have essentially unlimited resources. So they just have a bigger chip stack in this analogy. So they may be willing to spend more than the Mariners, and they may be willing to be more risky than than Jerry Dipoto, but it's because they can absorb that risk. They can recover from that risk. They have essentially unlimited resources. For the Mariners to be all in, I just don't think it's a. I don't. I'm. This is where I differ. Is I don't want to watch 7 years of bad Mariners baseball because they took a shot at winning a World Series with a 5% chance in 2025. So this is what the Padres trade for. They trade Juan Soto to the Yankees. It wasn't a year that the Padres intended on rebuilding, so it's not super prospect laden. But you could see the only and I'm gonna give my best attempt. So it's Michael King, Johnny Brito, Randy Vasquez, Drew Thorpe, and Kyle Higashioka, who, and they also got rid of Trent Grisham, who, and we'll spoil it. I'm gonna spoil it a little bit. My friend Josh, not a big Trent Grisham fan, but I think Grisham was like a glove only center fielder at the time. None of these guys are top prospects. Some of these guys had been top prospects, but none of them were on the prospect list. These are all guys who were either not high-ranked prospects or were big leaguers already. Higashioka was a like 30, like a journeyman, like 30-plus-year-old catcher. I think he's 35. Michael King is the best player in this deal, and he's been good. Michael King has been good. The rest of the trades has yielded not that much for the Padres. So that's the difference, right? The top three guys in the last trade are projected to be worth 13 wins above replacement combined in 2025. They've been good in previous years also, and could also yield huge returns in trades. Juan Soto, after they used up his value, he got closer to signing the mega contract that he did. There was less team control. Probably the market for him was smaller because most teams didn't expect they could re-sign him. Yield significantly less. So here are the players who have a projected wins above replacement on for the rest of the season on that Zips updated. If you're looking to fact check me, Michael King is projected to end the season with 2.6 wins above replacement. Randy Vasquez, 0.5 wins above replacement. Johnny Brito projected for 0 wins above replacement. Drew Thorpe made his debut with the White Sox last year. He was part of the Dylan Cease trade, which Dylan Cease has been very good, but he's not. Dylan Cease is not part of the return for Juan Soto. I guess Dylan Cease's performance could be considered a small portion of the return because Drew Thorpe is what got him there. And Higashioka is in Texas, left as a free agent. He was in his 30s, etc. So 13 wins above replacement in 2025 versus 3.1 wins above replacement in 2025 in the return that the Padres got for Juan Soto. To me, that doesn't... The fact that it's 10 fewer wins, theoretically, you could make the argument that, like, Soto had to have been... Soto was amazing. Soto was very good in San Diego. I don't want to discount that. Soto's performance is as good as you could hope for in a high-profile trade like that. One of the league's best hitters. There's no arguing. He was great. Still, the Padres, they're not getting as much out of the guys that they got for him later on. He was worth a lot less as the years went on. And now I want to read you. So I guess my stance on this trade, on the idea of trading for Ronald Acuña, is I don't. Let's go back to that very first slide. So, Colt Emerson, Bryce Miller, Harry Ford, Laz Montez, Brandon Garcia. I'm out on Colt Emerson immediately. I'd consider replacing him with Cole Young, but I'm out on the super high upside guy. I think the Mariners have 2025 depth to cover Cole Young's performance in 2025. Colt Emerson is a unique prospect to the system, a guy with very high upside at a premium position. Bryce Miller, non-starter, in my opinion. Because he is a starter in the rotation, he's a non-starter in this trade. You're taking away from this year to... And I understand why the Braves would want him. He's young and he's controllable, but that's... You're taking away from this year's contributions already. The ideal trade for a contending team is to not give up any 2025 or to give up very little of that year's performance for the player. So I would absolutely want to keep Bryce Miller. Now, can you replace him with Ryan Sloan? Can you replace him with Herangelo St. in that deal 1-to-1? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. If you could, I would do it. Harry Ford, sayonara. Laz Montez. Laz Montez is the one guy who I think he's got a little more boom bust because I think there's some concern about just like his general body type and build. This is always interesting. Here's a good example. So Fangraphs has him outside of their top 100, 7th on the Mariners list. Baseball America has him 97th. Major League Baseball has Laz Montez 42nd, and Baseball Prospectus has him at 53rd. He just got the call up to Arkansas, hitting very well there, by the way. But he's a guy that's got some questions about long-term health. Can his body hold up to his athletic ability? He's got, in fact, I want to say it's like Jeff Passan or somebody on the Brock and Salk program has talked about how his thighs are too big. His thighs are too big, so he's eventually his legs are going to break down. Maybe that's true, and there's probably mechanical concerns also. He's 6'5", and that's often comes with a long swing and a guy. I mean, Richie Sexson is the most famous example here of a guy that had this long swing that as he aged, it just fell apart. But Montez is only 20 years old right now. I'm not worried about that at this moment. I'd as much as I said a week or two ago, don't trade hitting prospects. I think in an Acuña trade, I'd be willing to trade Laz Montez. And then Brandon Garcia, although it goes against my 2025 contributions thing, late inning reliever or a reliever, a fringe roster reliever, maybe even somewhere between there. Those are probably the two outcomes. I'll let it go. So if you could do that, if you could trade Bryce, if you could swap Bryce Miller for a pitching prospect, Logan Evans, Emerson Hancock. Miller isn't even healthy right now. He's got elbow inflammation. He's not on the roster right now. He's not on the active roster right now. So how that would even work and how the Braves would look at that, I'm not sure. Harry Ford's blocked. That's how I would do it. I'd be wary of making this trade as it is. But I want to read you my friend Josh Firestein. I'm going to try to read it with and have it make the most sense possible. Let's get over to the old Josh Firestein slide. Speaking of which, I have like on my screen texts of from Josh Firestein coming up. I got to put my phone and everything into do not disturb. Let's get over to my pal Josh Firestein. So I sent him a text. How do you feel about the Padres trade for Juan Soto and the trade to the Yankees as a whole in 2025? And he said, oh man, first, bummer to see James Wood absolutely smashing in a Nats jersey. Second, I was all in on Mackenzie Gore and the Padres pitching coach, Ruben Niebla. Second, I was all in on Mackenzie Gore, and the Padres pitching coach, Ruben Niebla, is beloved and one of the best coaches for developing pitchers in the league. So seeing him shoving in DC also sucks. Did I miss shoving as a term? Third, am I like a boomer? Yeah, this term has completely eluded me. Good. Someone on Reddit Baseball said I heard the term shove. So in baseball terms, shoving is a slang used to describe a pitcher who is performing exceptionally well, pitching with great focus and effectiveness. Okay. So seeing him shoving in DC also sucks. Third, Juan Soto is great, and I loved watching him hit for the Padres. That year was supposed to be the year for San Diego, and they almost got to the World Series. And if they had, this wouldn't have even been a discussion anyone is having, because obviously the value of the trade would have been in that trophy. I want to bring up this before we get further into this. That year they traded for Juan Soto, days later, I believe, Fernando Tatis Jr. got busted for steroids and had to miss the rest of the season. Fourth, I like the trade to New York. We got a couple pieces in that trade that have been nice, like Michael King, who has been great, and Higashioka, who was great last year. Plus, we got rid of Grisham, who sucked for us, like 200 or less batting average, but is now smashing in that Little League stadium? Question mark. So we got pieces that were less valuable than Soto, but still valuable. Last point, fuck $760 million. Fuck that all day. I'm still mad that San Diego is paying Bogarts on a $280 million contract into his 40s. It was nice to have Juan Soto for a pennant run on his rookie contract. I will add, the Pods could have and probably should have held control of Soto's last contract year, but the trade value was huge. Also, rest in peace, Peter Seidler, an owner who truly loved his team and city. So, and then he said, I didn't respond fast enough, and so he goes, I think that's a little confusing. My point is that they could have kept him, and a lot of people would say kept him for as long as you can, or keep him for as long as you can. But if you're a Padres fan and you thought Juan Soto was forever, you're out of your mind. And it's better, in my opinion, to trade him away to a non-rival and get pieces back instead of just riding it out and watching him leave for the biggest paycheck available. If anything, I think this should make you angry at the Mariners not trading Alex Rodriguez at the time, by the way, when he ended up leaving in free agency. The amount that they could have gotten for him, especially at a time when teams didn't fully understand the limited value of a half season of a player, man, could they have not cleaned up. So I would say at the end of the day, my preference would still be hold. I think there's a very strong chance that Colt Emerson comes up. I mean, it's very strong is relative, right? Like, or it's a qualified. I mean it in a qualified sense. 25% chance Colt Emerson is better than Ronald Acuña in 2026. 2027. Let's say 2027. Very strong chance that deal looks a lot more like what the Padres gave up to the Nationals relative to Acuña's performance than it does what the Yankees gave up to acquire Juan Soto. And I think the Mariners, the biggest problem for me is if you trade all these hitters for Ronald Acuña, you clear out the system of its three best hitters, probably. how do you go about acquiring big league talent? These are three guys, Harry Ford, Laz Montez, Colt Emerson, who should be big league hitters in the next 3 years. How do you go about replacing those guys in the next 3 years? Because no hitters are trying to come to Seattle. That's what we've seen. So my vote is a reluctant no. I guess that's what I would call it. All right, thank you guys. Come see me do stand-up comedy, Casey McLean comedy everywhere. I got to get out of here.